Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. The first sign that something was wrong came as a silence. Not the normal kind of quiet that settled over Newman Enterprises after the last staff member headed home, but a sharp, unnatural stillness, like the building itself was holding its breath. Victor Newman stood alone in his office, the city lights behind him turning the glass into a mirror. In that reflection, he saw the same thing he'd seen his whole life, a man who didn't flinch, didn't bend, didn't lose. The phone on his desk vibrated with another message from security, and Victor barely glanced at it. "Handle it," he muttered, more to the air than to anyone listening. Victor's world ran on control. Every call, every door, every hallway camera, every whispered rumor in Genoa City that moved money or power, he had his fingers wrapped around it all. Or so he believed. A faint click came from the hallway. Victor didn't turn. "I said I'm done for the night." The office door opened anyway. He finally pivoted, irritation cutting across his face, and then his expression shifted into something rarer than anger. A surprise. Phyllis Summers stood in the doorway. Not frantic, not wild-eyed, not the Phyllis people expected when her life was on fire. This Phyllis looked calm, too calm, like she'd walked through flames and learned how to breathe inside them. "Victor," she said softly. Victor narrowed his eyes. "You have a lot of nerve coming here." Phyllis closed the door behind her with deliberate care. "I figured you'd say that." "You should be terrified." "I was," Phyllis admitted, taking a step forward, "for a long time." Victor didn't move, but his hand drifted subtly toward the desk drawer. A habit, a reminder he didn't need the weapon, he needed people to believe he might. Phyllis smiled like she could read his mind. "If you're reaching for something dramatic, don't bother." Victor's gaze sharpened. "What are you doing here?" Phyllis exhaled slowly, "Stopping you." Victor's mouth tightened. "You don't stop me, no one does." "Tonight," she said, "someone does." Before Victor could reply, the overhead lights flickered once, just once, like the building blinked. The air hummed, a tiny whir from the vents. Victor's eyes darted to the wall panel by the door, then back to Phyllis. "What did you do?" Phyllis didn't answer with words. She lifted a small device in her hand, pressed her thumb, and Victor felt it, a faint sting at the side of his neck. His hand jerked up instinctively, but his fingers met nothing. No dart, no needle, just a sting like an insect bite. He took a step forward, then another, but the floor shifted beneath him as if the room tilted. Victor Newman, the man who terrified Genoa City, swayed. Phyllis stepped closer, her voice stayed gentle, almost apologetic. "I'm sorry, I really am." Victor's eyes hardened even as his body betrayed him. "You think you can." His knees buckled. Phyllis caught him with surprising strength, guiding him down instead of letting him crash. Victor's head hit the carpeted floor, his vision smearing at the edges. "You did this," he rasped. Phyllis leaned down close enough that only he could hear, "Yes." Victor fought to keep his eyes open. "Why?" Phyllis' smile disappeared. Her gaze turned cold like winter glass. "Because you've been playing with everyone's lives like they're pieces on your board. You've destroyed families, you've used children as leverage, you've made people beg." Victor's breath came heavier. "That's business." "No," she whispered, "that's cruelty and you don't get to do it anymore." Victor tried to reach for his phone, but his fingers wouldn't cooperate. He heard distant footsteps, security, a guard. Then nothing. Everything went black. When Victor regained consciousness, the world smelled different. Not polished wood and expensive cologne, not the crisp chill of corporate air conditioning. This place smelled like dust, gasoline, and old metal. His eyes blinked open slowly. A dim bulb hung from a chain, swaying slightly above him. His wrists were secured not with ropes like some amateur kidnapping, but with zip ties tightened enough to hurt. His legs were bound to a chair. Victor tested the restraints. They didn't give. He took in his surroundings. A storage room or a garage, tools on a pegboard, cardboard boxes stacked like a wall, a small table with a bottle of water and a folded cloth, one narrow window near the ceiling painted over. Victor swallowed, steadying himself. Then he heard heels. The door opened, light spilled in from the hallway and cut across the room like a blade. Phyllis stepped inside. Victor's voice came out rough. "What is this?" Phyllis shut the door and the room snapped back into dimness. "A place where you can't call your people. A place where you can't threaten anyone, a place where you can't lie and have the world rewrite itself to match your lie. Victor glared, "You think this ends well for you?" "I'm not doing this for well." Phyllis moved toward him and set the water bottle on the table within his reach but not close enough. "I'm doing this because I'm done watching you win." Victor gave a dark laugh. "This is about revenge." Phyllis didn't flinch. "This is about survival." Victor's eyes narrowed. "Whose?" "Mine, my kids, everyone you've been squeezing until they break." Phyllis leaned against the table, arms crossed. "You want to know what's funny? You taught me how to do this." Victor's jaw clenched. "I didn't teach you anything." "Oh, you did," she said softly. "You taught me that if you want something in Genoa City, you don't ask politely. You take control of the board, you remove the king." Victor's gaze sharpened at the word. "King." He tugged once more at the zip ties. "You can't hold me." "I'm not planning to hold you forever," Phyllis replied. "I just need time." Victor's expression turned calculating. "Time for what?" Phyllis walked behind him. Victor felt her presence like a knife at his back. "To make you tell the truth," she said. Victor's voice stayed steady. "I don't know what you think you'll get out of this." Phyllis bent close to his ear. "Lily." Victor went still. Phyllis straightened, watching the reaction ripple through him like an involuntary twitch. "You were so careful," she said. "So many layers, so many fake trails. You locked her life in a cage and told everyone it was necessary." Victor's lips thinned. "Stay out of my family matters." "Funny," Phyllis snapped, suddenly losing her calm, "because you've never stayed out of mine." Victor's eyes held hers. "Where is she?" Phyllis stared back, breathing hard. "Tell me where Lily is. Tell me what you're holding over Kane. Tell me what you threatened Daniel with. Tell me what you did to Jack. Tell me everything you've been hiding." Victor's mouth curled. "So that's it, you want information." Phyllis' expression twisted. "I want you exposed." Victor leaned back as far as his restraints allowed, voice silky and dangerous. "Even if I told you anything, no one would believe you." Phyllis smiled, sharp, wounded, triumphant. "That's why I'm not relying on belief." She pulled her phone out and held it up. Victor's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" Phyllis tapped the screen. A red dot glowed. "Recording." Victor's face tightened. "Turn that off." "No," she said, voice calm again. "Talk." Victor stared at the phone, then at Phyllis, and he understood something unpleasant. She wasn't improvising. She had a plan. And Victor Newman hated nothing more than being outplayed. Across town, the chaos began with a missing meeting. Victoria Newman sat in the conference room at Newman Enterprises, jaw tight as she checked her watch again. "Where is he?" she demanded. Nikki stood near the window, arms folded, trying not to show fear. He didn't say he was leaving town. Nick paced, the tension in his shoulders like a storm waiting to break. He always tells someone, even if it's just to rub it in. Michael Baldwin looked at the security chief. "I want the footage now." The chief cleared his throat. "We're having difficulty accessing it." Victoria's head snapped up. "Explain." "The system shows a manual override. Someone disabled internal camera access between 9:41 and 10:06. Nick went still. "That's impossible." "It's not impossible," Michael said quietly. "It's deliberate." Nikki's voice turned sharp. "Who has access?" Victoria's eyes hardened like steel. "Only a handful, staff, security, Victor himself." Nick's phone buzzed. He glanced down and his face drained of color. "What?" Nikki asked immediately. Nick lifted the screen. A message from an unknown number. "You want him, come alone." Attached was a photo. Victor Newman bound to a chair. Victoria's breath caught. "Oh my God." Nikki swayed. No, this isn't real." Michael's voice went cold. "It's real enough to be a problem." Nick stared at the message again, his hands tightening around the phone. Who would do this? Victoria's mind raced, and then it landed on the one name she didn't want to say out loud. But the universe didn't wait for her. The conference room door opened sharply and Summer Newman rushed in, panic written across her face. "It's Mom," she blurted. "It's Phyllis, she's gone, she's not answering." And Daniel said she was acting weird, like she was saying goodbye without saying goodbye. Nick's heart stopped. Victoria's voice was quiet and lethal. "Nick." Nick stared at the photo of his father tied up, then at Summer's terrified face. His voice came out like a broken oath. Phyllis wouldn't. But deep down, he already knew. Phyllis absolutely would. Back in the dim storage room, Phyllis watched Victor's face as if she could peel secrets out of him by force of will alone. Victor's gaze stayed fixed, defiant, and yet there was a crack in it now, an irritation that wasn't about being bound, but about the fact that he couldn't immediately twist this to his advantage. Phyllis lifted the water bottle again and set it just a little closer. "I'm not a monster," she said, quieter than before. "Drink, then talk." Victor didn't move. "You want to play tough," Phyllis said. "Fine, but I'm not leaving until I have what I need." Victor's voice was low. "You're making a mistake." "Maybe," she whispered, "but it's my mistake to make." Victor stared at her. "You think you're saving your children, your friends, your precious little world." His voice sharpened. "You're igniting a power war you can't survive." Phyllis' lips pressed together at the phrase like it hit a nerve. "I've been surviving war my whole life." Victor's eyes flicked to the phone again. "Who else is involved?" "No one," Phyllis said quickly, too quickly. Victor's gaze narrowed. "Lie better." Phyllis' jaw tightened. "I did this alone." Victor leaned forward as much as he could. "Then you're either brilliant or desperate." Phyllis didn't answer. Victor smiled faintly. "Desperate people make sloppy moves." Phyllis stepped closer, her eyes glittering. "You want sloppy? Here's sloppy." She turned the phone slightly so the camera still captured his face, then hit a button on the screen. A new message popped up. "Nick, where are you? Answer me." Phyllis' throat tightened at his name. For the first time, the calm mask slipped and Victor noticed. "Ah," Victor said softly. "There it is, the weakness you love too loudly." Phyllis swallowed hard. "Don't." Victor's voice softened, almost fatherly, which made it worse. "This ends with you in prison, with your children hatting you." Phyllis' eyes flashed. "They already hated me, you helped make sure of that." Victor's expression didn't change. "I'm not the reason your children doubt you." Phyllis' hand trembled. She clenched it into a fist. "Say Lily's name again." Victor watched her carefully and then slowly he made a choice. He leaned back and exhaled, as if he'd decided she was dangerous enough to require a different strategy. "I'll make you a deal," Victor said. Phyllis laughed once, sharp and humorless. "You're tied to a chair and you want to negotiate." Victor's eyes glinted. "I always negotiate." Phyllis stared at him. "What's the deal?" Victor nodded toward the phone. "Turn it off, stop recording, untie me." Phyllis scoffed. "No." Victor's voice stayed calm. "Then you get nothing." Phyllis' smile vanished. "You think I won't break you?" Victor stared at her and the calm in his face looked like stone. "You can't break me," he said, "but I can break you." For a moment, Phyllis' chest rose and fell too fast. She looked like she might scream, like she might cry, like she might do both. Instead, she reached into her pocket and pulled out another device, small, sleek. Victor's eyes narrowed. "What is that?" he demanded. Phyllis' voice turned icy. "Insurance." She pressed it, and somewhere above them a low mechanical grind began, like a metal door shifting into place. Victor's gaze snapped to the ceiling window. A shutter slid across it. The last trace of outside light vanished. Victor's breath tightened. "What have you done?" Phyllis stepped back, voice steady again. "Now no one hears you, no one sees you, no one comes." Victor glared at her through the dim bulb glow. "Phyllis, you're not thinking." "Oh, I'm thinking," she snapped. "For once in my life, I'm thinking clearly." Then she lowered the phone closer to his face. "Where is Lily?" she demanded. Victor held her gaze. The silence stretched. Then Victor's lips parted and he spoke one word, quiet enough that the room leaned in to hear it. "Unsafe." Phyllis' hands tightened around the phone. "That's not an answer." Victor's voice remained calm. "It is if you understand what I'm saying. Lily is alive." Phyllis' eyes flickered, relief tiny brief before anger crushed it. "Alive where?" Victor watched her with a cold patience. "You don't have the stomach for what comes next." Phyllis leaned in, her voice trembling with fury. "Try me." Victor's eyes hardened. "She is being held in a place that will never be traced to me, not by you, not by the police, not by Kane, not by anyone." Phyllis' mouth went dry. "So you admit it." Victor smiled faintly. I admit nothing, I'm telling you what you already know. Philly's voice broke slightly. Why? Victor's calm turned sharp because Kane forgot his place. Philly stared at him. You took Lily to control Kane. Victor's eyes glinted. I did what I had to do. Philly's breath came harsh, and Daniel, Summer, Jack, who's next? Victor's gaze stayed locked on hers. Anyone who threatens my family. Philly's laughed again, but this time it sounded like a sob. You call this protecting your family? You're terrorizing everyone else. Victor didn't blink. That's the price of power. Philly stepped back as if she'd been slapped. And for the first time, she realized something terrifying. Victor believed every word. He wasn't ashamed. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't even angry. He was certain. That certainty made him more dangerous than any weapon. Philly's fingers moved on the phone, sending something, an audio clip, a message, a file, without Victor seeing exactly where. Victor noticed the slight shift. What did you just do? Philly's lifted her chin. I just made sure that if anything happens to me, the truth goes public. Victor's stare turned lethal. To who? Philly's smiled with a shake of nerves. Someone who hates you almost as much as I do. Victor's eyes narrowed. Jack. Philly's smile didn't confirm it, but her silence did. Victor leaned forward, the chair creaking. You think Jack Abbott will save you? Philly's whispered, not save, expose. Victor's voice turned dangerous. Then you've made your last mistake. What? In Genoa City, the fire spread. Nick didn't wait for permission. He left Newman Enterprises like a man possessed, tracking the unknown number through any contact he still had in the tech world. Chance Chancellor got pulled into the search by force of family pressure and pure panic. Michael Baldwin was already calling favors he'd sworn he'd never call again. At the Abbott mansion, Jack paced like a caged animal after Diane showed him the clip Phillies had sent, Victor's voice saying one word, safe. Jack's face was pale. She has him. Diane's eyes were wide with fear. Jack, she's going to destroy herself. Jack's jaw tightened, or she's going to destroy Victor. And across town, Summer sat with Daniel, both of them staring at their phones, waiting for their mother to answer, and both of them fighting a terrible thought. What if she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from? Kane Ashby, meanwhile, received a message from a burner phone he didn't recognize. A single sentence. I have HIM, you have one chance to end this. Kane's hands shook. Because he knew exactly who him was. And he knew exactly who would be bold enough, reckless enough to do it. Phillies. Kane whispered, what have you done? What? Back in the storage room, Victor's calm finally cracked, not with fear but with something sharper. Rage. You've set forces in motion you can't control, Victor said, voice low and deadly. Phillies stood her ground, like you haven't been doing that for decades. Victor's eyes burned. You want chaos, you will get it. Philly's voice trembled, but she didn't back down. Good, let Genoa City see you for what you are. Victor's smile was slow and chilling. They won't see me, they'll see you, the unstable woman who kidnapped a powerful man because she couldn't accept consequences. Philly's throat tightened. I'm not unstable. Victor's gaze flicked to her hands. Then why are you shaking? Philly's glanced down, realizing too late. Her fingers were trembling. She swallowed hard and forced her hands still. Because I'm angry. Victor's voice softened, almost gentle. No, because you're afraid. Philly's eyes flashed. I'm not afraid of you. Victor tilted his head slightly. You should be. Philly stared at him for a long moment, then stepped closer. She lowered her voice, quiet and fierce. I've been afraid my whole life, she said. Afraid of losing my kids, afraid of being alone, afraid that no matter how hard I fight, I'll always be the villain in everyone's story. Victor watched her, calculating. Philly's eyes filled, not with tears, but with something sharper. Defiance. Tonight, she said, I'm choosing to be the villain in your story. Victor's expression tightened. You're playing with fire. Philly's leaned in, eyes blazing. No, Victor, I'm lighting it. What? The door above them rattled. Philly's froze. Victor's gaze sharpened instantly. They found you. Philly's pulse spiked. No, this place is secure. The door shook again, harder this time. A voice shouted from the other side, muffled but urgent. Phyllis open UP. Philly's blood ran cold. That voice. Nick. Victor smiled, slow and triumphant, even with his hands bound. Your weakness brought them. Phyllis backed away, breathing fast. Nick's voice rose again, desperate and furious. Phyllis, I know you're in there, what did you do? Phyllis' eyes flicked to Victor, then to the phone, then to the door. Everything she'd planned, every step, every second of control was cracking apart. The chaos she wanted to unleash on Victor was about to swallow her too. Victor's voice was calm now, the way it always was when the world started to burn. This ends one way, he said, you lose. Phyllis stared at the door, tears finally threatening, no longer anger tears, but fear and heartbreak. Nick pounded again, please open the door. Phyllis whispered, barely audible, Nick. Victor watched her crumble and smiled like a man who'd never doubted the outcome. And then Phyllis did something no one expected. She grabbed a tool from the wall, a heavy wrench, stepped to Victor and cut the zip ties on his wrists with shaking hands. Victor's eyes widened a fraction. What are you doing? Phyllis' voice broke. I'm not letting you die in here. I'm not letting me become that person. Victor flexed his wrists, pain flashing across his face. You're making a very foolish choice. Phyllis stared at him, tears sliding down now. Maybe, but it's the only one I can live with. Nick's voice was frantic. Phyllis, what's going on? Phyllis unlocked the door. It swung open. Nick burst in and froze when he saw his father. Victor Newman, disheveled, furious, alive. Nick's eyes snapped to Phyllis. What the hell did you do? Phyllis' shoulders sagged like all the fight drained out at once. Victor stepped forward, voice like ice. She kidnapped me. Nick's face went white. Behind him, footsteps thundered, Chance, Michael, Victoria, Nikki. The room filled with Newmans like a wave. Nikki's hand flew to her mouth, Victor. Victoria's eyes were sharp with shock and fury, Phyllis. Phyllis looked at all of them, her voice small. I needed him to talk. Victor's voice was calm, cruel, and now she'll pay. Nick stared at Phyllis, anguish carving his face. Phyllis, tell me this isn't true. Phyllis' eyes filled again, it's true. Nick looked like someone had ripped his heart out. And Victor, free now, leaned closer to Phyllis, his voice so low only she could hear. You wanted chaos, he murmured, congratulations. Phyllis closed her eyes as the world around her exploded, shouts, threats, frantic calls for police, Nikki crying Victor's name, Victoria barking orders, Michael already shifting into legal defense mode, and Nick standing in the middle of it all, torn between fury and love and disbelief. Genoa City had just been set on fire. And Phyllis Summers had struck the match.